I didn't plan on noticing it. I mean, I wasn't looking for trouble. I was scrolling through my feed like any normal Tuesday morning, coffee half, cold, earbuds tangled, and then, there it was. A photo. Just a photo, but wrong. Not the kind of wrong that screams Photoshop at first glance. No, it was subtler. Someone had moved me, literally. In a group photo, my arm had shifted. The angle of my smile looked off. Too sharp. Too forced. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, and tried to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe I'd dreamed it. Maybe I was tired, but then the notifications pinged. Comments started trickling in, haha, classic move. Did he really say that? Wow, bold. And the worst part, I didn't remember saying or doing any of it. My stomach sank. I texted a friend, Sam, who'd been at the same event. Hey, did you see that photo? There was a pause before his reply, longer than normal. Yeah, he said finally. Weird, huh? Weird how? I typed, my fingers shaking just slightly. It's, I don't know, just funny. Funny. Of course, laugh at it, dismiss it. But it wasn't funny to me. Not yet. Later, during the lunch break at work, someone mentioned it again. Emily, one of the quieter colleagues, leaned in slightly, lowering her voice. You've seen the post, right? I nodded, unsure if I should have. Yeah, weird, right? She laughed softly, but there was something in her eyes, maybe curiosity, maybe judgment. Weird doesn't even cover it. People are talking. That's when I felt it, that prickling awareness that I was suddenly public. Not in a good way, not an invitation or a compliment, but like a spotlight had been switched on and I was frozen under it, completely unprepared. What do you mean, talking? I asked, trying to keep my voice light, casual. Oh, you know, group chats, people tagging each other, screenshots. The word hit harder than I expected. My chest tightened. Screenshots, yeah. It's just circulating, that's all. She said, shrugging. But the glance she threw over her shoulder suggested she was already someone else's messenger. Someone's spy. I spent the afternoon replaying the moment in my mind, trying to remember if I'd said something stupid or done something embarrassing. But the truth was, nothing came to mind. Nothing that would justify laughter or whispers, and yet the proof, or at least what looked like proof, was out there, floating in digital space. Waiting, watching, then came the message from an unknown number, saw what everyone's saying, crazy, huh? I stared at the screen. No name, no clue. I wanted to delete it, block it, forget it ever existed, but I couldn't. I had to know. Who is this? I typed. The reply came almost immediately. Does it matter? Just know I'm watching. A laugh that wasn't a laugh. Not the one you hear in movies. That quiet, impossible, lace sound that makes your stomach twist. And that was the trigger. The first real crack in my day, my sense of safety, even my own reality. Someone had made me visible in a way I couldn't control, and now they were somewhere else, somewhere out of reach, pushing buttons I didn't know existed. By the evening, I ran into another layer of exposure. My sister, visiting my apartment for an early dinner, pulled out her phone, swiping with casual efficiency. You've gotta see this, she said, voice light, but her smirk betrayed a little excitement, or maybe suspicion. I leaned over. There it was again. The photo, the comments, reposted by someone I didn't recognize. The caption was worse. Guess who's really like this? Who posted it? I asked, though I already knew there was no easy answer. Not sure, but people are tagging others. It's all over. I felt my throat dry. All over. All over. She said again, tapping her screen like it was nothing. Like I should be used to this by now. But I wasn't. I could feel my reputation starting to wobble. Not in the abstract way that happens in movies, but in the gut, in the chest, in the way my hands shook when I set my phone down. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about all the people who had seen it. Not friends, not colleagues, strangers, witnesses, observers, and whoever had done this, whoever had made me public, was smiling somewhere. I didn't sleep, not really. I kept imagining their perspective, the thrill of control, the careful nudging, the subtle hints that I was being watched. And in the back of my mind, I wondered, was it just about fun, or was it something worse? Microcrises hit fast. The altered digital footprint. A friend's cryptic reaction. The first stranger's comment online. It was small, almost insignificant individually. But stacked together, they made a wall I couldn't climb. And I realized for the first time that my life had a new, unwanted audience. By the time the sun came up, I had a decision. Pretend I didn't see it, confront someone, or wait for the next move. None felt safe, none felt right, and that's when I heard the knock. Not loud, not urgent. Just a slow, deliberate knock at the door. I froze because I didn't know if it was normal. Or the first real escalation from the person who had already made me public, vulnerable, exposed. I didn't move at first, just stared at the door, my heart thrumming in a way that made it impossible to ignore. A few seconds, or maybe minutes passed, hard to tell. The knock came again, sharper this time, impatient, deliberate. "Who is it?" I called, my voice cracking despite myself. No answer. I edged to the peephole and looked out. Nobody. Just the empty hallway, dim lights flickering slightly, shadows stretching like they were alive. I exhaled slowly, trying to laugh it off. Okay, that's nothing. Just my imagination. Then my phone buzzed. A message from Emily. "Go check. You'll want to see this." My stomach dropped. I wanted to scream, curse, delete anything. But curiosity won. I opened the door a crack, on the floor, a small envelope. No name, no stamp, no indication it belonged to anyone. Just plain brown paper. I picked it up with shaking hands and tore it open. Inside, a printed screenshot of the earlier post. But there was something new, a comment highlighted, my name circled in red, and beneath it, a note in messy handwriting. "You're next if you don't fix this." I froze, words lodged somewhere in my chest. Fix this. I muttered aloud. My apartment felt suddenly smaller, my walls closer, my breaths louder. I called Sam immediately. "You need to see this," I said, sending him the photo. He replied almost instantly, but there was hesitation. "Jesus, that's bad, bad. It's a threat. Maybe, I don't know. People do weird stuff online. Don't freak out. Don't freak out." Easy for him to say. He wasn't staring at my walls, thinking about who might be standing outside in the hall, waiting. I paced back and forth, tried to make sense, tried to rationalize. But the envelope was real, the threat was real, and the fact that someone had delivered it, someone had entered my space without my consent, that was public, that was exposure, that was escalation. Later that evening, Emily called. "Hey, I didn't want to text," she said, voice low. "But some of the other colleagues saw the post. Someone forwarded it. It's people are talking at lunch tomorrow, and not nicely." I felt my chest tighten again. Public judgment, not rumor or speculation, not private whispers. Real faces, real eyes, real mouths talking about me. And there was nothing I could do to stop it. I don't know what to do. I admitted, voice barely above a whisper. "You deal with it. You're the one in it," she said, almost laughing, almost sneering. "Or you could just ignore it and let them figure it out themselves." I didn't laugh. Couldn't, because ignoring it felt like surrender, and yet acting felt dangerous. Both options carried risk. Both could make me look guilty, or weak, or something worse. The next morning at work, it was worse. Small glances, quick whispers, phones subtly angled as I walked by. A screenshot had made the rounds, floating in group chats I wasn't part of. Comments attached, "Remember this guy. Can't believe he did that." Not surprised. I cornered one of the colleagues, Mark. "Hey, did you send this around?" He shrugged, like it was nothing. "Seen it, yeah. Circulated, maybe. Didn't think it mattered. Didn't think it mattered." My voice rose despite my attempts to keep calm. It's not true." He laughed softly, almost apologetically. "True or not, people see what they see. That's how it works." I realized he was right. Proof didn't have to be accurate. The fact that it existed in any form was enough. Micro crisis number 2. Private disbelief colliding with public perception. Back at my desk, I stared at my computer, replaying everything, trying to trace who had started this. But every trail led nowhere. Screenshots, forwards, mentions, anonymous accounts, cryptic comments. Subtle, small, but accumulating like drops of water wearing down stone. By lunchtime, I felt trapped. Emily approached again. Look, I don't want to make it worse, but you should know more people have seen it, even upper management. That hit differently. Private whispers were one thing. Authority watching, that changed everything. It meant consequences, official consequences. It meant I was now not just exposed socially, but professionally in a way I couldn't control. I sank into my chair, head in hands, mind racing, the envelope, the post, the whispers, screenshots. Comments, every small escalation building, layering upon itself. The threat, once distant, now felt immediate, and I understood for the first time that this wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a joke. Someone was deliberately pulling me into a spiral, testing boundaries, watching reactions. Every glance, every comment, every whisper had weight now. And by the end of the day, I had no allies left I could fully trust. Not friends, not colleagues, maybe not even myself. That night, I lay awake again, trying to make sense, trying to prepare, trying to predict the next move, but the truth was simple. Whatever came next would be worse. Much worse, and nothing in my life, nothing, could have readied me for it. The next morning, the office felt different. Not quiet different, not subtle, but heavy, like the air itself had thickened overnight. I could feel eyes tracking me from cubicles, glances that lingered too long, whispers that stopped the moment I looked toward them. I tried to act normal, coffee in hand, computer booting up. But everything felt staged, like I was walking into a theater where the audience already knew the plot. It started small. My phone buzzed constantly. Screenshots of the post, forwarded by someone I didn't know, appearing in chat threads I wasn't part of. People I barely spoke to, clients, interns, contractors, suddenly commenting under my social media posts. Some supportive, a few neutral, and several sharp, cutting. Can't believe this, one said. Never expected that from him, wrote another. Every ping, every notification felt like a drop of acid on my nerves. Emily leaned over at some point, whispering, "It's everywhere, even outside the office. People are tagging friends, posting it in groups." I tried to breathe. "But it's not true," I said almost to myself. "Truth doesn't matter," she said, shaking her head. "Perception does." I hated her for being right. By mid-morning, my supervisor, Ms. Alvarez, called me into her office. The walk down the hall was unbearable. Every step echoed. Every glance from colleagues felt magnified. My stomach twisted. When I reached her office, she didn't smile. She didn't greet me warmly. She just gestured to the chair in front of her desk. "Sit," she said. I obeyed. My hands gripped the edges of the chair. "Do you know what's been circulating?" she asked, eyes sharp, voice calm but dangerous. "Yes," I said. I've seen some posts." She sighed, leaned back. "I need to know your side, because this is reaching the upper floors. Screenshots, emails, whispers from other departments. People are asking questions, and some of it is very concerning." Concerning, the word made my stomach drop. Concerning wasn't maybe funny or weird. Concerning was official. I don't know how it got out. I stammered. I didn't what? Post it, share it, confirm it. Her eyes narrowed. "The thing is, people are saying it's authentic, and right now, you're the only one who can explain." I opened my mouth, closed it, opened it again. My voice trembled. "It's not true. I don't know whoever it is doesn't matter yet. What matters is you're involved, and right now, involvement looks bad." I nodded, though it felt like swallowing knives. Bad, already bad. And it hadn't even reached the real public yet. Not the posts, not the screenshots on social media. Not the forwarded messages in groups where my name had become a punchline. The first real crisis of the day came during the staff meeting. A group chat screenshot appeared on the projector. forwarded by someone who clearly didn't think I'd see it. My face circled, comments highlighted, people snickering quietly. I could feel the room tilt slightly against me. The whispers grew louder in my head. Every chuckle, every cough, every diverted gaze felt like a hammer on my chest. I tried to speak, to explain, but words stuck in my throat. When I finally forced them out, it came out rushed, stumbling, defensive. I don't know who posted that. It's not accurate. It's misleading. A few colleagues nodded, like they understood, or wanted to appear like they did, but others rolled their eyes, smirked, or glanced away. My attempt at clarity made me look guilty, or weak, or both. By lunchtime, social exposure had escalated further. Screenshots were circulating outside work, posts on community forums, comments by people I hadn't even met. Did you see what he did? Can't believe this is him. Every mention was a small shock. I felt my world constrict. My friends, my colleagues, my safe spaces, all invaded. Then came the second microcrisis. A forwarded email from an unknown source addressed to upper management, claiming I had acted inappropriately, quoting messages I had never sent. I stared at the screen, disbelief clawing at me. Fabricated proof, digital lies, but official looking. Signed by a name I didn't recognize, the implication was clear. Someone was making me appear culpable in multiple ways simultaneously. I called Sam, desperate. It's not me. I swear, it's fabricated. Someone's framing me. He hesitated. I don't know what to say. People are already judging. Even HR is talking. You have to. Do what? I snapped. Explain. Defend. It doesn't matter. Everything I say gets twisted. And that's when the first real panic hit. I realized it wasn't just the posts, the screenshots, the whispers. It wasn't just my colleagues. It was the idea that no matter what I did, no matter how I explained, the public perception had already started forming, and it was against me. By the afternoon, I had to navigate the building like a minefield. Every glance, every smirk, every whisper became evidence in my mind. Friends seemed distant. Casual greetings felt forced. Even Emily, who had tried to warn me, now looked hesitant, unsure how much to say, how much to defend, how much to let be. And all of it, every whisper, every glance, every post, every email, was part of a single, unbroken escalation. Microcrises stacking on each other, proof accumulating, public exposure intensifying, and me powerless, flailing, trying to reclaim control in a space where I had none. By the time I got home that evening, my phone buzzed again, another screenshot, another forwarded comment, another trace of someone else's amusement at my expense. I stared at it, chest tight, hands shaking, and I realized, this isn't just happening to me. It's being orchestrated. Someone is directing the chaos, one small push at a time, and the next move, whatever it is, will be even bigger. The next morning, the tension hit differently. It wasn't whispers or stares this time. It was emails. From HR, from IT, from someone in upper management I hadn't even met. Each subject line sharper than the last. Urgent, immediate clarification needed. Review of recent activity. Concern regarding behavior. My inbox felt like a courtroom, and I was on trial before even walking into the office. I read the first email carefully. HR wanted a written explanation of the post circulating in the group chat. The email didn't ask if it was true. It didn't ask who started it. It asked me to justify myself, officially, in writing. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. What could I say that wouldn't make it worse? I typed a few sentences, deleted them, started again. Every word felt like a landmine. By the time I hit send, I was pale, jittery, and more aware than ever that the narrative was slipping away from me. Then Emily appeared at my desk, glancing around nervously. "You need to be careful," she whispered. "They're taking this seriously. Screenshots, emails, they're stacking it all together. People are judging before anyone asks questions. Judging." That word again, heavy. I nodded, but inside I felt my panic rising. Not just social judgment now. Professional judgment. Authority judgment. And every step I took, every explanation, seemed to feed the fire. By mid-morning, a forwarded message appeared on Slack from a coworker I barely knew. A screenshot of a private conversation I didn't remember having. My words were there, but slightly altered, phrasing tweaked, tone skewed. The implication was unmistakable. I was acting recklessly, intentionally. I froze. No, that's not right. I muttered, voice low. Someone behind me chuckled quietly. I turned, Mark, leaning against the doorway, arms crossed. See, it's all out there. He said, almost casual, almost kind, but there was an edge. And honestly, people believe it. I swallowed hard. Believe what? That you know acted like that, like you said it, like you meant it. I wanted to shout, to scream, to grab the laptop and throw it out the window, but I didn't. Instead, I nodded, feigning calm, while inside, every muscle tensed. Micro-crisis, one of the afternoon. Social exposure intensified, proof now appearing authoritative. Lunch came, but I didn't eat. The break room felt like a courtroom again. Screenshots on phones, whispered conversations, snatches of laughter. And a new post had appeared online, one that Emily showed me discreetly. The caption was subtle, almost innocuous. Funny how some people think they can hide their side of things. But the implications were clear. Not only were colleagues watching, the world, or at least a slice of it, was now aware. The post was shared, tagged, reposted. Comments piled up. Did anyone see this guy's side? Not surprised. Wow, bold move. Every single one pricked at my chest, echoing a truth I didn't recognize. Perception had replaced reality. By mid-afternoon, HR called me in again. This time it was formal. A chair in a small room. A supervisor seated across, clipboard in hand. Can you explain this? She asked, sliding a printed email across the table. Screenshots included, highlighted passages. My name circled, annotations in red. We need to know your intentions. People are concerned. Upper management is concerned. I blinked. Intentions? I didn't. None of this is true. She sighed, leaning back. You understand why this looks suspicious. We have to act on what we see. Your explanation will be considered, but right now, the evidence is significant. Significant. That word hit harder than anything before. Not funny, not weird, not concerning. Significant, and I couldn't argue with that. Because even though it was manipulated, the written proof existed. Digital traces, screenshots, highlighted words crafted to look authentic. Micro-crisis 2 of the afternoon. Authority escalation. The official machinery of judgment now actively shaping perception against me. I left the room shaking, hands cold, throat tight, stomach twisting. Walking back to my desk, I realized that Emily had been right. They weren't just judging. They were forming a narrative, and in that narrative, I was guilty regardless of reality. By evening, the first ripple of public exposure beyond the office began. A friend sent me a link. The screenshots had been shared in an online forum, accompanied by commentary from people who didn't know me. This guy's a classic. One post said, "Can't believe how bold." The post had hundreds of views, people I didn't know with no context now thinking they did. I sank into my chair, heart racing, social exposure, authority pressure, digital proof escalating. And the morally gray antagonist, whoever it was, remained invisible, unchallenged, pulling strings. Every action I took was misread, misinterpreted, or twisted into proof of my guilt. That night, I stared at my ceiling again, realizing something terrifying. This wasn't just online. It wasn't just work. It was a full-scale, public, authoritative, irreversible escalation. And no matter what I did next, the next micro-crisis would be worse. Much worse. The morning felt heavier than any day before. Walking into the office, I noticed it immediately. The whispering had changed. Not the usual glances or smirks. This was sharper, deliberate, loaded with expectation. People weren't just curious anymore, they were waiting. Waiting for me to fail, slip up, confirm their assumptions. By 9 a.m., my inbox was already full. HR had scheduled a formal review. IT had forwarded logs, apparently investigating my activity. My supervisor requested a face and upper management had been CC'd on every email. The network of pressure felt like a net tightening, and I was caught somewhere in the middle. I tried to sit at my desk and focus, but every ping of a notification made my stomach twist. Slack messages, forwarded screenshots, comments from people I didn't even know. I couldn't escape. Even Emily, who had tried to warn me earlier, now avoided eye contact. Her hesitance cut sharper than the accusations themselves. The first escalation hit mid-morning. I was called into a small conference room. 2 HR officers and a senior manager sat across from me, expressions neutral but unforgiving. "Do you understand why we're concerned?" one asked, sliding a printed screenshot toward me. Comments circled in red, notes scribbled in the margins. "We've verified this is circulating widely. We need clarity." "It's not true," I said, voice shaking. "I didn't post anything. I didn't send those messages. It's been manipulated." The manager raised an eyebrow. "Manipulated how? The screenshots appear authentic. People are responding as if these are your words. You need to provide context." I opened my mouth, then closed it. What context? The screenshots were doctored, the emails fabricated, the posts carefully curated to look legitimate. But none of that mattered to them yet. Proof existed. Whether it was real or not, my explanation was secondary. Walking back to my desk, I noticed more people watching. Subtle stares, paused conversations, whispered glances. Every single coworker seemed to have absorbed the narrative and was now complicit in reinforcing it. Even those who had been my allies were cautious, hesitant. The morally gray antagonist, whoever they were, had done something I couldn't see yet, but the results were obvious. Then came the second micro-crisis. An anonymous email landed in my inbox from someone claiming to have additional proof. A recorded conversation, snippets of which allegedly confirmed the behavior I was accused of. My pulse spiked. I played it once, twice. There were pauses, gaps, edits, but the tone it sounded plausible. Enough to make me doubt myself. I called Sam again, desperation clawing at my voice. "It's not real. Someone's doctored it. Someone's trying to ruin me." He hesitated. I don't know. People are going to believe it." Exactly. That was the terrifying part. Truth didn't matter. Not anymore. Not when every crisis stacked, building toward a crescendo that I couldn't stop. By lunch, the rumors had evolved. Screenshots, forwarded emails, and now snippets of the alleged recording were circulating among colleagues. I overheard a small group whispering, "Did you hear what he said? Sounds just like him, right?" That voice, my hands shook. I couldn't respond. Every attempt to clarify risked making me look defensive or guilty. The narrative was no longer mine. Every day, every hour, it solidified. Emily came by again, cautiously. I think someone's pushing this further intentionally. Look, I don't know who, but they're making it escalate. I wanted to scream, to confront someone, but who? I couldn't identify the antagonist, no name, no face. Only manipulation, traces, and consequences that hit me at every angle. By mid-afternoon, another micro-crisis. A colleague, trying to be helpful or malicious, I couldn't tell, printed a copy of the doctored email and left it on my desk with a sticky note. "You need to see this," and my heart sank. The evidence was now tangible, physical. No escape. No screen to close, no notifications to mute. It was here in the real world. I stared at it, shaking. The proof, or what looked like proof, was stacking, escalating, and the social pressure around me had become a wall I couldn't climb. Every friend who had tried to warn me had pulled back. Every colleague who might have helped had retreated. I was alone in the eye of a storm I didn't know how to stop. By the end of the day, I realized the point of no return was approaching. Authority figures weren't here to resolve confusion, they were amplifying it. Social exposure was now unstoppable. And the morally gray antagonist, still unseen, still orchestrating, still feeding the cycle. I walked home that night with a knot in my chest. I didn't know who to trust, what to believe, or how to protect myself. The escalation was relentless. Screenshots, posts, whispers, emails, recordings each crisis more severe than the last. And I knew that tomorrow, whatever came next, it would be worse. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at my hands, thinking about the network of chaos surrounding me. Social exposure, authority pressure, manipulated evidence, public perception. All converging, all active, and me, the powerless center, trying desperately to reclaim control, even as each move seemed to tighten the noose. By the time I went to bed, I didn't sleep. I couldn't. The sense of being watched, of being manipulated, of every interaction being another piece of proof, true or false, hovered over me like a cloud ready to burst. The spiral had begun in earnest, and there was no turning back. The next morning, I woke before my alarm, my chest already tight, stomach twisting. The city outside my window seemed indifferent, unaware that my life had shifted into a loop I couldn't escape. I didn't want breakfast, didn't want coffee, didn't want to check my phone, but I did instinctively, and the first crisis hit immediately. A forwarded email from someone claiming to be a witness had landed in my inbox. Screenshots, notes, highlighted text. My face circled in red, my words framed as evidence. I dropped my phone onto the table, hands shaking. "It's not real," I whispered, but even saying it didn't convince me. Doubt had begun to creep in. If everyone else could see it, maybe, just maybe, there was some truth I had missed. At the office, the tension had thickened overnight. Conversations stopped when I walked by. Phones angled away, then subtly angled back, as if the posts and messages were living, breathing things. The first public confrontation came mid-morning. "Hey," Mark said, catching me in the hallway. "We need to talk about what's going around." I froze. "Mark, I don't know what happened, but people are saying things." He leaned in, voice dropping. And honestly, management's starting to believe it. I wanted to shake him, to scream, but I couldn't. Words faltered. My voice caught, it's false. Everything. I didn't. You need to be careful." He interrupted. "People are watching, even outside work. Even outside work, that's when panic fully settled in. The crises weren't just internal anymore. Friends, strangers, colleagues, they were all part of the same escalating pressure. And the morally gray antagonist, still invisible, still orchestrating every subtle push, every nudge, every fabricated proof. The second crisis hit during a department meeting. A new screenshot, forwarded by someone eager to appear helpful, flashed on the projector. Comments highlighted, tone suggested. Even upper management leaned forward, eyebrows tight, taking notes. I wanted to stand, explain, defend, but the words wouldn't come. I opened my mouth, closed it, tried again. It came out stammered, halting. I didn't say that. It's edited, misleading, please," but the murmurs had already begun. Whispers around the room, glances exchanged, eyes narrowing. Social exposure had escalated. The digital proof, now amplified by authority attention, was becoming undeniable in perception, if not in reality. By lunch, I was drained. Emily approached, cautious. "Look, I think someone's manipulating this, deliberately. They're feeding it to HR, to management, to everyone. They want a reaction. I know." I whispered, frustration shaking me. "But how do I stop it? Every time I try, it gets worse." She shrugged, hesitant. "Maybe you can't. Maybe you just survive it." And that was it. Survival. My new objective. Not clearing my name. Not explanation, not vindication. Survival. By mid-afternoon, another crisis emerged. An internal memo, supposedly from HR, appeared on the office notice board. Anonymous, typed, printed, official. Looking, it referenced the posts, the screenshots, the alleged recordings. The note didn't accuse directly, but implication is worse than accusation. Every colleague reading it would subconsciously weigh the evidence, connect dots, draw conclusions. Social judgment compounded, authority reinforced, digital proof now tangible in the physical world. I sat at my desk, heart hammering, head spinning. Friends avoided me, colleagues stared. Authority figures had started to treat me like a problem rather than a person. And somewhere, the antagonist morally ambiguous, careful, cruel. Watched, nudged, recorded reactions, analyzed weaknesses. By evening, I realized I was alone. Everyone who could have helped had either withdrawn, judged, or misread the situation. Screenshots, forwarded emails, doctored recordings, memos, every element meticulously staged to escalate pressure, had worked. I was a public case, observed, discussed, dissected, and trapped. Walking home, I felt eyes on me, not just imaginary eyes, but the kind that linger in streets, on buses, in shops. People noticing, reacting, sharing. The spiral had gone beyond work, beyond friends. Social exposure was omnipresent, relentless. At home, I collapsed onto the couch, phone buzzing continuously. Another forwarded screenshot, another comment, another snippet from the recording. Micro-crises stacking like building blocks, forming a wall I couldn't scale. Each one worse than the last, each one more believable, each one more permanent, and I realized terrifyingly that nothing I did would stop the escalation. Every reaction, every attempt at defense, every explanation could be twisted, edited, used against me. Public perception, authority judgment, digital proof, all converging. The antagonist's plan, subtle and meticulous, was working. I sat in silence, chest tight, hands trembling, realizing the truth. My life had changed irreversibly. The micro-crises weren't isolated incidents anymore. They were an unstoppable escalation loop. Social exposure had reached critical mass, authority pressure had intensified, and the evidence, real, fabricated, or edited, was now weaponized against me. By the time night fell, I didn't sleep, I couldn't. The cycle of escalation had become a living thing, circling, waiting, observing. And tomorrow, I knew, would bring even more pressure, more exposure, more proof, and deeper consequences. The morning started with a feeling I hadn't experienced before. Dread. Not a flutter, not a pinch, but a steady, sinking weight that made even standing feel like a chore. I knew what awaited me at the office. Screenshots, whispers, emails, possibly memos. Every interaction could be a micro-crisis waiting to happen. And after yesterday, I understood one terrifying truth. The spiral had no bottom. I walked in, coffee in hand, shoulders stiff. Glances followed me, phones subtly angled, conversations paused mid. Word when I approached, even Emily avoided me. Her glance said it all. She wanted to help but didn't know how. The first micro-crisis hit before I even reached my desk. Mark leaned against the doorway, casual on the surface, but his eyes sharp. "Hey," he said. I saw what's circulating now. It's spreading outside the office. What? My stomach dropped. Outside, yeah, forums, social media. Some of your friends are seeing it too. People are talking. I nodded, unable to form words. I wanted to scream, to explain, to plead. But even if I did, it wouldn't stop it. The narrative had left my hands. By mid-morning, authority pressure intensified. HR called me for a meeting with 3 senior managers present. One of them, Cole, died, handed me a printout. It wasn't just screenshots anymore. It was collated, emails, social media posts, snippets of recordings. Someone had compiled it all like a dossier, complete with highlighted passages and handwritten notes in the margins. "You see why we're concerned?" the manager asked. "Yes." I said, voice trembling, "but I didn't do any of this. None of it is real. It's fabricated." "Your intent is unclear. The impact, however, is real. People are reacting, and you need to explain yourself." The words hit me like a blow. It didn't matter that it was fabricated. The impact was reality. That was the problem. Micro-crisis number 2. Authority emphasizing consequences over truth. Later, during lunch, a private betrayal revealed itself. I had hoped for one ally Emily, but she hesitated, eyes darting around the break room. I don't know how to help," she admitted. "I've told 8. Char, some things that maybe make you look bad, but I thought it would protect you, or at least explain it." I felt my chest tighten. "You what? I didn't mean it like that." I tried to clarify, but she trailed off, and I realized the full weight of it. Someone I trusted had contributed to the pressure, even if unintentionally. By mid-afternoon, social exposure intensified further. The screenshots, emails, and snippets had leaked into multiple chat groups, forwarded beyond my colleagues. People outside my workplace were commenting. My friends were seeing them. My name was floating everywhere, discussed, dissected, judged. And the morally gray antagonist, still invisible, still manipulating. Every move I made, every reaction, every glance they observed, twisted, escalated. Microcrisis 3. The spiral accelerating beyond my control. Then came an official communication. A notice from HR circulated to the department. The wording was neutral, but the subtext was clear. Please maintain professionalism while the matter is reviewed. Any further issues will be addressed accordingly. Everyone reading it knew the implication. The implication, I was under scrutiny. Publicly, privately, professionally, socially. By evening, the cumulative effect of microcrises, authority involvement, and social exposure left me exhausted, trembling, and unsure who I could trust. Friends had distanced themselves. Colleagues were cautious, suspicious. Authority figures were increasing pressure rather than clarifying facts. And the antagonist's manipulations were now a constant shadow. I sat at home, staring at the ceiling, thinking about what had started as a subtle photo, a small post, and a cryptic envelope. In less than a week, my life had transformed into a minefield. Every interaction, every communication, every notification could trigger a new crisis. I had reached the point of no return. The phone buzzed again, another screenshot, another forwarded comment. Another note, this time anonymous, hinting at new evidence, new witnesses, new reactions. My stomach twisted. I realized something terrifying. The escalation wasn't just happening. It was being guided. Each crisis was worse than the last because someone deliberately orchestrated the sequence. The morally gray antagonist, invisible and omnipresent, had engineered the spiral from the start. By nightfall, I couldn't sleep. The fear, isolation, and anticipation had become a constant weight. Social exposure, authority pressure, manipulated proof, everything converged into a single, relentless force. And I understood that whatever came next, it would be even worse. The morning arrived with no relief. The office was different now, not just tense. It was charged. Conversations stopped mid-sentence when I entered the room. Phones subtly angled, screenshots forwarded again. Every digital trace I thought I could control had escaped, multiplying into evidence I couldn't disprove. By 9:15 a.m., HR summoned me to a conference room. 3 managers waited, faces neutral but unreadable. On the table lay a stack of printed screenshots, emails, and snippets of recordings, all collated as a single dossier. Each page highlighted, annotated, framed as proof. Do you understand why this is serious? One asked, voice calm but sharp. Yes, I said, swallowing, but it's not real. It's manipulated. Manipulated or not, the impact is real. Reputations are at stake. Behavior is being interpreted. You are involved. We need clarity. Crisis 1 of the morning. The emphasis wasn't truth. It was consequences. Social judgment and institutional authority converged into a single pressure point. My attempts at explanation felt hollow, swallowed by the weight of perception. Back at my desk, the phone buzzed again. Another forwarded screenshot. A colleague tagged me in a comment online. Another private message, anonymous. Keep quiet or it gets worse. Every notification was a tiny needle in my chest. Microcrisis 2. Digital proof feeding social and psychological pressure simultaneously. Lunch offered no respite. I overheard whispers, short fragments of sentences, carefully observed glances, fingers hovering over screens. People discussed the collated evidence as if it were fact, debating motives, outcomes, credibility. Even those who had been my allies now acted cautiously, unsure how to respond. The antagonist's influence was unmistakable. Manipulation wasn't just online. It was shaping reality around me. By mid-afternoon, another microcrisis hit. An anonymous memo appeared on the internal board, neutral in tone but ominous in implication. Please maintain professionalism while the matter is under review. All behavior will be considered in context. Every person reading it instantly connected the dots. Social pressure compounded, authority reinforced, perception hardened. People avoided me subtly, whispered carefully, typed carefully, moved carefully. I felt like a live wire. Then came the most tangible escalation yet, an email from upper management requesting a formal statement to be shared with the department. Not confidential, public. Everyone would see my words, every phrase scrutinized, every hesitation noted. The pressure wasn't abstract anymore. It had physical weight. Micro, Crisis 4. Forced public accountability under manipulated evidence. I tried drafting a response. Every word, every sentence seemed dangerous. If I defended myself too aggressively, I'd look defensive. Too cautiously, I'd appear guilty. Even when I deleted multiple drafts, the anxiety didn't leave. Every second, every choice amplified the consequences. Emily approached cautiously, eyes wary. I don't know how to help, I tried. But maybe you just survive this. That's all we can do. Survive. The word settled in my chest, not vindication, not clarity, not justice. Survival, that was all that mattered now. By evening, social exposure had gone beyond the office. Screenshots, forwarded messages, snippets of recordings had circulated online. People outside work commented, speculated, judged. My friends had seen parts of it. Some reached out hesitantly, others didn't. Trust fractured, every interaction became risky. Micro Crisis 5, outside social exposure increasing, with tangible consequences. I sat at home, head in hands, phone buzzing constantly. Each new notification was a potential micro-crisis. Each new view, forward, comment was another escalation. I felt trapped, caught between authority, social exposure, and manipulated digital proof. And the morally gray antagonist, still unseen, still orchestrating, still watching. By nightfall, I understood the full scope. My professional world was on edge. Social perception had hardened. Authority figures had misinterpreted, delayed, or amplified the pressure. Allies were unsure or absent. Digital proof had become weaponized, and no matter what I did next, it would only escalate further. The spiral was complete. The point of no return had passed. Every interaction, every word, every glance could trigger another crisis. Micro-crises stacked, social exposure intensified, authority pressure reinforced, and digital proof reshaped behavior around me. I realized the escalation loop was now a living thing, and I was at its center. I sat on the couch, exhausted, chest tight, hands trembling. Screenshots, emails, recordings, memos. All tangible and intangible proof of my alleged guilt, piled around me like a wall. Social judgment, authority involvement, and manipulated evidence had fused into a single, relentless force, and I understood with absolute clarity that the next chapter would bring consequences I could no longer avoid. The first thing I noticed the next morning was silence, not the comforting kind, the heavy, awkward silence that follows a storm. People avoided eye contact, whispered in hushed tones, or pretended I didn't exist. The office felt like a place I no longer belonged. I sat at my desk, coffee cold, staring at the screen. Notifications still came, but I no longer opened them. The emails, screenshots, posts, memos, they weren't new crises anymore. They were residue, social fallout, evidence of what had already happened. My life had been rewritten, layer by layer, by someone else, and all I could do now was navigate the ruins. Emily stopped by cautiously. "Hey, I just wanted to check if you're okay," she said. Her voice was low, uncertain. "I know things got messy. I tried to help, but I don't think it worked." I nodded, too tired to respond. Her hesitation, the unspoken truth, cut deeper than any post or screenshot. Allyship had fractured, even among friends. Every relationship was now tinged with doubt. Micro-crisis one of the day. Personal connection strained beyond repair. By mid-morning, the institutional fallout became tangible. HR sent a final notice summarizing the investigation. Ambiguous conclusions, partial vindication, but heavy emphasis on caution. Behavior would be monitored, reputation noted, and any future incidents would be considered seriously. They didn't absolve me, not entirely, and that was the point. Authority didn't resolve the crisis, they cemented its residue. Walking through the office, I noticed subtle changes in behavior. Colleagues no longer included me in casual chats. Meetings that once felt collaborative now felt performative, polite but distant. Comments that once contained warmth now contained hesitation or neutral phrasing. Every interaction had an invisible weight. The evidence, the posts, the rumors, the authority scrutiny. Microcrisis 2. Changed behavior around me, subtle but undeniable. By lunchtime, social exposure had left its mark on friends and acquaintances. A few reached out, carefully measured, as if speaking could reopen the wound. Others avoided me entirely. Even those who had been closest now carried a distance I couldn't bridge. The morally gray antagonist was gone, unseen, but the social residue remained. The spiral had passed, but its effects lingered. The digital proof, the screenshots, forwarded emails, doctored recordings, was still out there, floating online, quietly influencing perception. Every search, every casual mention, kept the story alive. People remembered, commented, speculated. Public perception hadn't returned to normal. It had only shifted to a different, subtler kind of judgment. By mid-afternoon, a final micro-crisis hit. A colleague approached my desk, hesitated, then placed a folded note in front of me. It wasn't a threat this time. It was a statement, acknowledgement of the chaos, and a subtle warning. Be careful. People are still watching. The handwriting was unfamiliar, but the meaning was clear. Even in the apparent calm, consequences persisted. I stared at the note, feeling the full weight of it. Weeks of escalation, social exposure, authority scrutiny, digital proof, manipulations, betrayals, had left scars that wouldn't heal. Relationships were damaged, trust was fragile. Behavior toward me had changed permanently. Even my own perception of reality had shifted. Hesitation, doubt, and wariness had become defaults. By evening, I walked home slowly, head down. The city felt indifferent, but my own internal world was irrevocably altered. Conversations replayed in my mind. Faces, glances, reactions all filtered through the lens of the escalation I had survived, but not escaped. Social judgment, authority pressure, manipulated proof. They had changed everything. At home, I sat in silence. Tried to read, tried to eat, but nothing absorbed me. Every notification, every glance, every reflection reminded me the scars weren't just external. They were internal. The story hadn't ended. It had only transitioned into its aftermath. I thought about the morally gray antagonist, still unseen. Whoever orchestrated the chaos had vanished, leaving only traces. The screenshots, the posts, the altered recordings. And yet their influence remained. People behaved differently. Friends behaved differently. Authority behaved differently. And I, too, behaved differently, cautious, guarded, hesitant to trust or act without forethought. By nightfall, I understood it fully. The spiral had ended, but the residue was permanent. Reputation altered. Relationships strained. Trust fractured. The world around me had shifted subtly but irrevocably, and I would carry the consequences indefinitely. Microcrisis 5. Lasting social and emotional residue. And even as I sat there, exhausted, I felt the faint prickling awareness that someone, somewhere, could restart the spiral at any moment. The scars might fade, but the memory of escalation, the fear, the doubt, it would remain, shaping every choice, every glance, every action. The office was quieter than it had ever been, not empty, but subdued, almost fragile. Conversations were polite, brief, and distant. Even casual laughter carried hesitation, as if everyone feared a misstep. The digital traces of the escalation, the screenshots, posts, and emails, still circulated silently in group chats and social media feeds, influencing perception in ways no one openly acknowledged. I sat at my desk, staring at the screen, realizing that the escalation hadn't ended. It had transformed. The initial micro-crises, once sharp and immediate, were now invisible currents shaping every interaction. Every glance, every comment, every subtle gesture carried weight. Relationships that had been ordinary felt strained, altered. Trust, once implicit, had to be rebuilt carefully or not at all. Emily stopped by again, hesitating as she reached my desk. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I didn't realize, I didn't know how far it would go. I nodded, words felt inadequate. Forgiveness didn't come easily when the fallout was subtle but constant. Her apology was a gesture, but the underlying reality remained. The consequences of manipulation, exposure, and authority involvement lingered. Micro-crisis one of the day, residual guilt fractured allyship. By mid-morning, I noticed the behavior around me had permanently shifted. Colleagues were cautious, distant, careful. Some who had once been friends avoided eye contact entirely. Casual greetings were measured. Conversations were clipped. Subtle, pervasive, and unavoidable social residue. The escalation had left a permanent imprint on interactions. An email arrived from HR, a routine follow-up, neutral, bureaucratic, but unmistakable. A note that my file had been updated, behavior monitored, observations ongoing. The wording was measured, professional, but the subtext was clear. Authority had stabilized the situation, but only by maintaining the consequences, the cautionary note. Micro-crisis 2, formal acknowledgement of lingering scrutiny. By lunch, the digital proof still circulated quietly online. Mentions, posts, references, fragments of the original escalation that people remembered and interpreted as they wished. Each new glance at a phone, each whispered conversation, reminded me that public perception had shifted permanently. It wasn't about vindication anymore. It was about navigating a world subtly reshaped by exposure. A colleague, one I had trusted, approached mid-afternoon. He slid a folded note across my desk, eyes averted. Just careful, people are still watching, he murmured before leaving. No anger, no accusation, just the residue of fear and judgment. Micro-crisis 3, continued social caution reinforcing the aftermath. By evening, I understood the final truth. The morally gray antagonist, whoever orchestrated the escalation, had vanished. Invisible, unaccountable, yet omnipresent in the residual consequences. The scars weren't just digital or social. They were emotional, psychological, and professional. Every interaction, every glance, every gesture had shifted. My life was the same on the surface, but underneath, it was irreversibly changed. I walked home slowly, head down, thinking about how exposure, authority pressure, and manipulated evidence had converged to create a reality I could barely influence. The spiral had ended, but the damage remained. Relationships were fragile, reputation was altered, trust was scarred. Even my own behavior, cautious and measured, was a product of the escalation I had survived. At home, I sat in silence, phone off, world muted. Weeks of pressure, scrutiny, and exposure had left me exhausted. But it wasn't just fatigue. It was the lingering awareness that the world was now different, that interactions carried unspoken caution, that even unseen forces could manipulate perception again. Micro-crisis 4, permanent internalized tension, the night stretched on, heavy and quiet. I replayed events in my mind, the envelope, the posts, the screenshots, the recordings, the memos, the whispers, the authority reviews, the subtle betrayals. Each escalation, each micro-crisis, each exposure had left its mark, and though the immediate crisis had passed, the residue was permanent. I realized that resolution, when it came, wouldn't be dramatic. It wouldn't erase the scars. Friends might slowly approach. Colleagues might resume a semblance of normalcy. Authority might no longer actively monitor, but the subtle changes would remain. Social perception, trust, relationships, they were all forever altered. Finally, I leaned back, exhausted, acknowledging the truth. I had survived, but survival didn't mean freedom. The fallout was permanent, and every interaction, every choice, every glance would carry the memory of escalation, exposure, and manipulation. The world had shifted around me, subtly but irreversibly, and I would carry the consequences for a long time. Micro-crisis 5, lasting social, professional, and emotional residue. and in that quiet I accepted it, not with relief, not with closure, but with awareness. Life had returned to a semblance of normal, but the scars were visible, the judgment persistent, and the tension subtle, enduring, impossible to erase remained.